Hello, everybody, and welcome to Cinema Savvy. It is myself, George, joined once more by Ayman for a very special review. As we talk about Nope, the latest film from Jordan Peele, which is finally out in the United Kingdom. Yes, it came out 2 days ago here, unlike America, which got it, I want to say, like 24th, 25th of July.
Yeah, a while ago.
Yeah, a silly gap. Ayman, what films have you seen bar Nope recently? The answer probably nothing, because nothing's been out since Thor.
I saw Bullet Train.
Yeah, sorry, Bullet Train.
Yeah,
That is on the channel. That's
But-
backfired. That was a terrible joke I tried to make. But aside from that, we'll get into all that. How are you today?
I'm not too bad, thanks. I mean, it's hot, but we're dealing. Got multiple fans on, got a vest on.
I feel like you were on our last Heatwave video, so it's kind
Yes,
of
I
like
was.
continuing
Yeah,
at this
yeah.
point. And as well, we have Carl in the comments. Good evening, Carl. A lovely hello there to you. And for people at home, we're going to say from the get-go, this is going to be a spoiler review / discussion today. We just made the decision with this film being out for so long already in the States. There's a lot to say about this film. And if I'm going to be blunt, you can't really speak about this film without spoilers. Because there's a lot to speak about, and there's a lot you probably can't say at all. I'd have been terrified about that. So please do comment your thoughts on Nope. As I said, it's spoiler discussion. Bring them all up in the comments if you want to. Anything you think we've missed, any interesting takes you've got, how you've read into the film. This isn't going to... I'll tell you what, I'm going to make this as my opening remark. This is going to be a film that they make everybody watch that studies film and media for the next, 20 years. When they're like, when you're like 16, 17, you're getting into it. And it's like, go watch Fight Club, go watch this. And I feel like Nope's going to be on there. And I'll get into my thoughts on that in a bit. But also, as I said, there's a lot more reviews coming out. And if you want to find out about videos when we announce them, the best way to do so is always getting on social media. Twitter and Instagram at cinema_savvy, Facebook and letterboxd.com/cinemasavvy. I'm have a link to Redbubble in the description below where you can pick up some of our merch, none of which I'm wearing tonight because it's just too hot and I needed to reach a hat that was around the corner because I'm trying my hair with the heat. It'll probably melt. And I have been in the cinema today, so I'm a bit of a Bond hype at the moment. But Ayman, I'm going to jump to you really randomly. What I actually want to kind of ask you first is Jordan Peele, we haven't really spoken on the channel before, so there was a review for Get Out in the build-up to the Oscar year. It got nominated twice. And I don't think there was ever a review for us. I think it came out when I was in Chicago, and I'd had the passwords changing, banned off the account. Shouldn't I said that? But so us, I still haven't seen. So I kind of want to hear from you how familiar. I mean, even if it's not the films, like his comedy, I feel like you and Sim have brought up his comedy to me in the past before I knew who he was.
Yeah, so I mean, I always knew the name of Peele, but then I watched Get Out, and then I managed to put two and two together that Jordan Peele was one half of Key and Peele. And even at that time when I put two and two together, it was really surprising because the theme that his films are taking compared to how he started off with his comedy, it's just so different. But yeah, I mean, all his films have been so different compared to the comedy that he did, which is really surprising.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you on that. And the one sketch that I think it's impossible not to know is, of course, the president one, because meme culture has rebuffed that so many times. Yeah. My background with him is sort of, I'm going to be blunt, I hadn't heard of him till Get Out, and I think over here, I mean, I don't want to, I'm not like this be all end all of filmers, but I remember Get Out, I think was a lot bigger in the States than here in the UK. And I only really heard about it around the time of the Oscars. It came out in 2017, I think. And I remember picking it up ready for the Oscars to watch in advance. And it was a really interesting one because, again, I'd known the meme of the... it was Lakeith Stanfield, obviously. Now I didn't know who he was at the time. And, yeah, Us, again, I missed. So Nope was a really interesting one because we've got a great comp by Carl I'm going to bring up in a minute. But heading into Nope for me, I can't even remember the announcement of this film. I just remember there's Jordan Peele has got a new film coming out. There's nothing known about it. And here's the first teaser. I don't know when that first teaser came out, maybe the start of this year. But of course, we have Daniel Kaluuya in the cast, Keke Palmer, Stephen Yeun as well. And we've got a great combo car, which is going to be a really interesting one, actually. Although the cast was great and the cinematography was beautiful, the plot didn't do it for me. Just too ambiguous if my questions are answered. And here's the wonderful thing, the term ambiguous, because if I'm talking about heading into the film, if Charlie's watching, she'll know. I saw, what was I watching? It might have been Bullet Train, actually. I watched a film, Bullet Train. And again, I'd only seen the teaser for Nope. and I missed the press screening in the UK, so we'd been allocated 2, and something came up, so I couldn't go, so we returned them back to Universal. And 3 days after what would have been the press screening, I had the second trailer for this, and I basically think it spoiled the entire film. It didn't, but a lot of it was. And I'm wondering if you'd seen that trailer. It's when it's like shows like the dad dying at the start.
I
It's
don't
got
think
the
I saw that one.
UFO. Well, I'm glad you didn't, because I was so angry the first time I saw it, and then the next day was Goldeneye. And when I was at Goldeneye, they played that same trailer, and I was like, I've had this ruined twice, and I was texting Charlie because I was really angry. Carl put, sorry, it meant many questions not answered. That is absolutely fine. It doesn't matter. We're going to bring those up, Carl, because I think there's a lot of reading in this film. So any of your questions, actually comment them. We'll bring them up as well, see if we can get a reading on them, see if we can do anything. But yeah, heading into this, I don't want to say hyped. That's a really interesting. I love Daniel Kaluuya. I'm a big fan of his. I think he's one of the not the more interesting British actors that's got a big, but his rise over the last sort of 3-4 years to me has been incredible. And obviously pushing another show coming out, well, we're going to talk about later this week, is he's obviously narrating All or Nothing, the Arsenal documentary, which is as an Arsenal fan, which is kind of cool. So I had like a double dose of Kaluuya in the last week or two. But yeah, hype for this film. There wasn't too much of it, but I have been moaning all year round. We've got a terrible summer blockbuster window. There's been hardly any films out. We had Prey that went streaming, which was a shame because it was great. We had 13 Lives that went to streaming, which was a shame because it was great. And, you know, I said July, we had Thor on the 7th. We've had, as you said, Bullet Train. I'm not going to count The Railway Children Return. I'm sorry. I'm not going to count Fisherman Friends 2. I didn't know there was a sequel again until Charlie texted me today. But Nope was the one that really got me when they just randomly moved it from like to mid-August for here, because I'd have understood if, you know, had the World Cup have been on, studios have done it in the past. There was sort of no reason for this to be moved, and sort of without ranting too much further, I was very worried because obviously I know you're not really on social media. I'm obviously on Twitter a lot, and I was terrified at the Americans watching this, and I said, there's no way we're going to get like 3 weeks about the Americans ruining it. And to be fair, they didn't. But everyone kept talking about the Steve Onion poster, so I just assumed his fate and was pretty much right from the get-go. But I want to kind of jump to you. Did you see anything else before watching this film? Like, going into it today for you, like, how was it getting ready to sit down?
I mean, when I first saw the trailer, because with me, it's horror films are always something that I watch with my dad, if I can, because he's a big horror film buff as well. So when we started seeing the trailers, I was like, when I first saw the trailer, I was like, Dad, watch this trailer. We can go watch it. It's a Jordan Peele film. And it went from there. And then the hype sort of died down. Like, I'd see the trailers every now and then. But the hype sort of died down until like a couple of weeks ago when the tickets were released. And I was talking to my dad about it. We booked the tickets essentially. But yeah, the hype was it was like it was a steep rise, and then like we heard nothing, and then it rose again essentially.
Yeah, no, it's a really good place to start that. And I guess what we can kind of say, as I said, this is a spoiler discussion / review, so we're going to go into it. And I say, Carly, you're welcome to comment any of that in the comments. We talk about the premise of the film. So we've got OJ played by Daniel Kaluuya, and 6 months after his dad has died in very mysterious circumstances. His ranch, struggling post the ranch. And I guess we can say that we can say it's not a UFO anymore. There is an alien in the sky is lurking, who is very territorial. That's the most we probably get out of this potential meaning. And it's, I don't really do horror. I've never been invested in the genre. I've seen a lot of horror films, but I just don't get a kick out of it, and I don't get afraid of it. So I'm not arrogantly saying I'm not into it, but it's probably the genre I just don't really see much of, but I am always open to it when the right ones appear. So what I want to kind of ask you is, I don't think this is a slasher film, but what would you say this is in horror? Or is this something new? Is this a new entity that you've seen yourself?
I think it's different because when you get alien films, you get different versions. So you get those sort of horror films or sort of more thriller-based, like The Fourth Kind and stuff like that, where the aliens are a big part of it, and it's always more horror based rather than anything else. So you do get those, and I think No plays into that really well. I mean, yeah, it's one of those where I would class it as a horror film because it is quite scary, but it's not a slasher film like Scream or something like that, or Halloween. It's more psychological horror, I'd say.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think psychological is there because there are some bits where I was there's certainly one shot where I was absolutely terrified. It's the kids, it's the aliens. I don't know. That was just it was just so well shot. That's all I'm gonna say. Because as you said, it's psychological because you're trying to figure out, and obviously at this point you assume as a viewer that it's a UFO and the aliens have come out of UFO. And I think the genius in the film, if we're jumping, is obviously the is it even a twist that it's not actually UFO aliens in it? It is a UFO. It's a predator in theory.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of those where it was such a good twist because throughout the whole film, you're thinking it's an alien, it's a UFO. Like there's aliens experimenting on people and the horses within the spacecraft, and then you see that shot where the Jupiter's, I forgot the name of the ranch, but they get all sucked up, and then you realize, oh, that's not UFOs. That is an alien itself, and it's like sucking those people up and basically eating them.
Yeah, it's traumatizing. You know what I'll say? So I was at the Arsenal game yesterday, and I originally, because the train strikes, I had to get into London like 9 to guarantee my car park at my usual place. I was gonna watch this at 10 in the morning for this to finish at like 12:15, and then head straight to the Emirates for a kickoff at 3. And like the day before, I was like, you know what, I've got nothing on this Friday until 8:30 when I'm going soon. I was like, okay, I'll squeeze in the cinema trip after work. I'm so glad I didn't watch this before the football because I don't think I'd have been able to concentrate on the football because I've not stopped thinking. Like I was for like an hour at like 8:30 on Friday. I just kept thinking about like those people getting sucked up still. Because that image is just stuck in my head of the screams, and it's such an interesting way of doing it. And as you say, it is a big twist. And we've got a kind of casting. How did the guy who was the child actor train the aliens to be part of the show? Did find it interesting. He didn't learn from what happened in the show. Oh, this is it. Oh, we've got so much to say about him. I don't think the alien was trained. I would say. I think that
think it was.
I'd say coincidence is probably like the filmic term, but it's clear that the alien figured out that
it would be fed. I mean, I think it was a creature of habit. It realized,
like a predator. I'm trying to think. What film is it where? I guess it's like the raptors in Jurassic Park, right?
Yeah,
they don't want to be, or is it the Indominus Rex in World? Sorry, it's like they know when they're going to get fed, but they don't want to feed; they want to hunt. And I think that's how I read it. But we've got a lot to say about Stephen Yeun because his character is one of the most fascinating things in this. And actually, if we actually want to talk about some of the characters, we'll start with the main family. So as I said, we've got. I want to bring up Keke Palmer's character because I feel like a disservice if I don't. So we've obviously got Daniel Kaluuya, as I mentioned, playing OJ, and then Keke Palmer's playing Emerald. Obviously, a duo that is inherited the ranch and their father's horse. What do you call it? Horse wrangling company. Like a stunt,
horse training.
Practical.
And
it's really interesting because we begin with obviously the sales pitch to the studio with that cinematographer that we'll get to later that comes back into it, which is I think a very, very, very fascinating character. And we can tell they're struggling and the dad's died. I actually want to ask you this. How did you feel about the opening scene of the dad dying? Because that was in that trailer. So I was annoyed because I'd essentially seen the fact the dad had died. Again, am I moaning too much that an official trailer spoiled something? I don't know. But if I hadn't known that shot, I'd have felt so much more mysterious at the beginning. And the concept of the coin falling through his face, through his eye.
Well, with me, it was because I didn't see that trailer. I didn't know that was going to happen. But it wasn't. It was shocking because it was like the opening scene. You'd expect the dad to hang around for a little bit anyway. But the fact that that was like the setup for them going forwards, I think it was really well done. I agree. If I'd seen that in the trailer, I think I would have been annoyed, but it wouldn't have bothered me as much because it happens within the first 10-15 minutes, so it's not that deep.
And that's how I felt. That the moment the film sort of began,
Mm.
and then it happens within minutes. It's okay. That's sort of called it a little bit more because there's nothing worse than there was, I think, Terminator Genesis, whatever it was the
Genesis.
famous one where I did the famous Matt Smith twist in the trailer. That's like the ending of the
Oh,
film.
okay. Yeah.
When they were like suddenly he'd killed them all. It was really weird. It was a terrible film, but I remember there's a habit of companies doing this with their big releases. And what I kind of enjoyed, we talk about their character because really, I'm going to say this, I don't feel there's that much character development with the two leads. And this isn't a criticism of their performance. I think their performances are great,
Mm.
but the film isn't really about the humans. To me, this film, and this feels so up itself, so just please correct me if it sounds it as well, because it's going to say I want to say loud. This is one of the very few films where I feel like you need to read into it more so than watch it. And that can be deemed a criticism as well as potentially a positive. And as sort of mentioned earlier, this is something like a film studies class would do.
Mm.
It's like the first ever time I watched Fight Club, I didn't really like it that much. I thought it was overrated because at the age of like 16, like where's the
Yeah.
fighting? Where's the alpha males punching each other? And you mature and read into it and realize, hold on, that isn't actually
The thing
the
this
film.
film's about. Yeah.
Yeah, and this is how I felt with this. That listen, I love Daniel Kaluuya. I think he's fine in this film. I enjoy him in a lot of stuff, and I think he's quite playing the sort of stoic, struggling brother. Again, I don't need him to be the limelight, but I would say that Keke Palmer, she sort of has the charisma, and then they make it crystal clear from their opening scene that she's the one that does the pitch to the studio, not him, but she's trying to move on with her life. I like there's this sort of sibling, not rivalry, there's a sibling respect there, but each to their own. They're trying to do their own thing. And I like what it's trying to tell you before, obviously, we learn that there's something else happening.
Yeah, I don't think there was character development within themselves, but I think their relationship did evolve over the film. Where, like, I mean, starting from the beginning, where Daniel Kaluuya as OJ is obviously annoyed that she's pitching her other side businesses, and then they have that argument like the ranch is my side hustle, not all the other stuff that I've got going on. But then at the end, the final scene is Keke Palmer just looking over to Daniel Kaluuya and just doing that thing that they used to do, and just sort of having that respect, like they were there for each other at the end. So I think, they themselves as characters didn't evolve as much, but their relationship did.
Yeah, exactly. And I think as well as you said that, when with that jump, well, we are jumping in, but when she gets the photo, she doesn't grab the photo and like wave it to the camera. She's going to her brother.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing. He's waiting there for her. And he's almost done a self-sacrifice for her as well to get out, without pun intended. And it's one of them where it's a really fascinating sibling rivalry. And there's one moment a lot of people speak about, and I loved it, is when they sort of all agree that there's like an alien there, and they do this not high five, but it's like a really like powerful. It's like almost like a weird handshake thing, but it's really like aggressive.
Yeah.
And obviously, me and my sisters aren't like that, but I felt like I was watching siblings. That they were older, and again, like me and my sisters, like we're obviously like most siblings are, like you're close even if you're not close. And I feel that it felt like a real brother and sister. They weren't such polar opposites. It was almost scripted entertainment. It felt like there's a real connection there, and they have drifted. And I think reading into that stuff and how obviously the dad's death has separated them and pushed them away further because each of them's handling its own way. It just felt very real. And I think if you don't have the characters in films like this that you believe in or enjoy, you're not going to have any tension for when these big moments are happening where their fates are potentially sealed.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. Because at the beginning you did feel that they weren't as close as they could be, or it's their dad's death had affected them both very differently. Whereas Daniel Kaluuya as OJ had obviously tried to keep everything afloat, and then Keke Palmer's Emerald was like, "Okay, I'm out. Like, I'm done with this. I don't." She sort of closed herself off to the whole sort of the ranch and, by extension, her brother, because she didn't want to deal with it, or she didn't want to acknowledge that their dad was dead, basically.
Yeah, no, I'm with that. And I guess what we can do with these two, we'll actually get to the alien shortly. This might be a massive subplot, so we might as well bring it up now. We've got Stephen in as Jupe, the child actor who would obviously then create his theme park. I think they call it Jupiter's Land or
Right.
Claim. It was like it was almost like a sort of like Wild Western.
Yeah, it was Claim.
And this is the thing for me. So I mean, even if you go to the beginning of the film begins. It starts with, of course, the monkey. On this, we don't know as I said, the concept. We hear the audio, we hear them filming something, we hear the bang and the screaming, and obviously then we get the shot of the shoe and of course the monkey with the blood. And I'm gonna say, like, for an opening, that was quite not terrifying, but you're hooked, you're in, and it's that classic like first sentence. You know, when like don't judge a book by its cover, blah blah blah. First sentence is meant to pull you in. For an opening, that was very very interesting because you texted me earlier when you watched it with the I want to Gordy's home stuff.
Gordy, yeah.
It's really interesting because obviously you mentioned it's a not you didn't use the word red herring. Sorry, I forgot what you texted me. But,
it's a red herring.
The whole subplot there is incredible because, as you said, you think the shoe's going to mean something, the monkey's going to mean something. I've got another great comment by Carl. I thought that there's still part of the Monkey Paw Studio.
So did I.
So did I. I thought.
So did I.
I was sort of there, like, wait, like this is an insane like company logo. I don't know if he's just created the studio for this film or if it was there before. But if he hadn't created it before this, that's really insane that he's then named after the monkey from it. But if we want to get into actually, to be fair, I'm going to talk a lot about Jupe because I think the whole film comes down to this character, not just his actions, but. And I don't want to do the boring film student insight, but I might as well. So, obviously, we know he's sort of monetizing his tragedy as a kid, right? He speaks about how he lets people go in for fees to that spare room, and he's this child actor that, had a traumatic experience, and he sort of like laughs it off, and he speaks about the SNL sketch, and there's more going on, and this is where sort of like Peele's direction comes into it. I'm not even going to get into themes at the moment, but when you realize that this kid is still traumatized. We get that shot of him like with the blood on his face, don't we? Just under the table for a few seconds, and then it cuts. And there's this real, not mystery, but there's this. We know that something else had happened there, and we have the shoe, of course, in his room of merchandise. And even before it all kicks off, the actress is there in the stand for the day, which is like I think he calls it his first crush as well. She's got like a real like
she's disfigured basically.
Yeah, she's got a disfigured face, and I feel that might have been in a trailer because I was really curious. Like, what does she look like? And then it's in the trailer. So okay, that's again like that's just a bit of you didn't need to show it, I guess, but it's a great way to raise intrigue of how does this evoke into the film? Yeah, and what I just felt about his character. I mean, give me your thoughts on him because I'm going to go into some of the stuff I've been reading and what I think myself. But how do you feel with that entire character arc of the child had actually traumatized, monetizing it, pretending it's all good?
I think, with the whole thing of his character arc, I think because I agree with Carl. When we sort of were seeing the opening bits, I thought it was still part of like the monkey paw sort of introduction, and then it turns out it was actually part of the film. But then throughout that, we see bits every now and then, and like you even get a whole sort of chapter called Gordy, and it reveals a lot about like what happened there. I think with all that, you have that intrigue throughout the whole film. Like, how does this tie into the overarching plot? And I think it was one of those, like, it was a red herring because you're instantly intrigued, and then throughout the whole film you're thinking, oh, does this link with this because of this, and sort of that sort of stuff. But I think his character arc, he had the most sort of development. He was one of the characters that sort of pushed the film along a lot because of like how it started with the show, with Gordy, and then his death basically, and how he dies, and sort of that's the sort of twist moment that you realize when he dies and everyone else in the stand dies. That's when you realize that isn't a UFO; it's actually an alien. So I think he did a lot for the film.
No, I'm kind of with you, and it's really interesting because you get the whole, he's got a family, they run it together, and
Mm.
something's going to happen with them all. And I think what I loved is, we're following as the viewer Daniel Kaluuya for this. We're figuring out the story with him, and obviously when they all die, I know it's sort of jumping ahead. We've had this build up because the first time something happens, you see the lights, you hear the talk, and you think, okay, is Stephen involved? Is the monkey there? Like, did something happen? Is the shoe involved? And all this sort of stuff. And as you said, there's so many questions, and ultimately none of that has any impact or meaning on the story, on the events. He's just essentially a passerby that we just get to learn a bit more about. And I think his story arc really comes under the reading. Now, I'm going to say before I get into any of that sort of stuff, again, it's going to sound up itself like art student stuff. But I just want to say Stephen Yeun in this, I absolutely loved him. So I haven't watched The Walking Dead. I'm very aware of that he was in that. I'm aware of his final scene because everyone is familiar with that scene. And he was in an incredible film last year where he did get his Oscar nomination, which was Minari, which I loved him in. And he's going to be in the new Bong Joon-ho film. But what I found fascinating was that he originally hadn't been cast. It was going to be Jesse Plemons, who had to drop out to do the new Scorsese film Killers of the Flower Moon. If anyone's familiar with Jesse Plemons, Breaking Bad, he's married to Kirsten Dunst. What was the film they did together recently? No, that was Fargo they did together. Jungle Cruise, very, very, very talented actor. Of course they did a film recently, Power of the Dog. They're both married. They're both what's the word? They're both nominated together for Oscars, which is really cute. And this is also a bit hype for the Scorsese film next year. That the fact that he passed on this role to do the North Scorsese film, like it's gonna have to be good. Carl has just pointed out something I'm going to bring up. Very well said. The way I see it, it was just showed you can't truly tame a wild animal, which he didn't learn from and cost him his life. That is 100% part of it, Carl. And this is kind of like I guess something for the whole film, that cinematographer character as well. This film is very much like a cultural reading on like modern society. And I mean, the TMZ report is probably where it sort of hit me in the face a bit hard with it. Like, TMZ are here, which is the ultimate record everything, upload it to the web. They're there to get stories, etc., etc. They've got no morality at all. But what I found fascinating with the Stephen Yeun stuff is precisely that the reason we're following him is because he was, from what it seemed, not very lucky to survive the events, because the that's not a beauty of the story, but the reality is that the monkey sees comfort in him under the table.
Yeah,
he's not afraid of him under the table. Like, whether he'd calmed down at that point, or he'd always been nice to him. Not to bring out school shooter jokes, but it's that sort of thing. When they always speak of like, you were nice to me. You hear that a lot in films. They don't kill them. I don't know if it's meant to mean that, but you get the sort of the knuckle thing before the monkey gets shot. And I thought the whole premise of that was really fascinating. That, as you said, it is a red herring, but there's real meaning behind it. And for his fates to be him, there's a fucking UFO. I mean, he would be thinking there's a UFO in the sky rather than try and not do something, but he is happy for it to be there because he's monetizing it. And it's that modern ideal of, and this happens a lot of, I don't want to get on too much of a social media thing, but it's when you see like these people where they're like fighting at clubs or bars or football games, and there's always a comment like, but why do you need to record this? And it's the people that do it for likes. I think the one that probably a fairer one, the ones that really gets me, is like when there's like homeless people and someone records themselves like giving the homeless person a meal. And just sort of sat there saying like, can you not just give them the meal? Do you need to document it on camera? Can you not like do something good with expecting something back? And I feel that this film is a critique of just like, again, like I don't want to blame Generation, sound like one of those kind of people, but it feels like it's a commentary on how and where we live. And certainly, a lot of the background of this production was during COVID. And I think Jordan Peele has spoken in interviews about the effect. If it wasn't for COVID, he wouldn't have made this film. The idea came to him looking at humanity or something like that, which is really interesting to hear him speak about this film. I think he's just been on the Empire podcast too, which I need to listen to. But reading into the Stephen Yeun stuff, even way before the event that gets him, there's so much going there because the Gordy stuff I just found interesting. And again, I don't mind a red herring in a plot. what I really appreciate is that the red herring itself is character development for Stephen Yeun, but it's reflecting, it's giving us, as we've just had like a conversation, it's giving the film meaning and it's
Yeah.
critiquing something. And I think there's a lot to read into it. I don't know how you feel that. Is that me sounding a bit
Yeah,
sort of
no,
deep
I
with it?
think I completely agree. It's one of those. I don't mind red herrings in films, as long as it has some sort of relevance or it does something. It isn't just one of those plot lines that we're just going to throw out there. You have that. It's it's not going to link to the film at all. Whereas with this one, I think Jordan Peele understood and I sort of like did it really well. Where it does give character development. It is linked and it does sort of show and push the film forwards, basically.
No, I'm with it. And what I kind of want to ask as well with that, how do you feel about the upright shoe? Do you make anything of that? There's a few different things online. I'm curious if that's been anything
I
you've looked into.
Yeah, I didn't realize it was upright until like the Gordy chapter when they really focused in on it.
Yeah.
Um, but I don't think it was. I think it was just one of those weird things. Like again, I think it was part of the red herring. Like, why is this shoe upright and stuff like that. It wasn't linked anywhere. It was just Jordan Peele was like, "Here, this is something happening. Have at it."
No, I'm with you. And I think to end the intro on it, to end the flashback on it, and obviously him buying it, finding it, and keeping it in
Mm,
his like private collection. And kind of even with that, I mean, it's one thing to like monitor, we know that actors do private signings, we know they have memorabilia, but what I find fascinating is the sort of not the monetization of it again, because it sounds very like modern, but we didn't know that there was a horrific tragedy
linked to that.
until we
Yeah.
see everything. And it's
Mm,
like this kid went through this. He clearly still is traumatized, because we're
mm,
not just showing that, we're seeing the flashbacks in his head, and then it'll cut to him in the present getting ready,
yeah.
to talk about something else, which I thought was interesting. He clearly can't go by without remembering this day over and over, no matter how much he smiles about it, which
Mm,
I think is credit again to Steven Yeun's performance. Um, but it's that logic of like, he knows that people died that day and he's
mm.
still
He saw
happy.
people die that day. Yeah.
Yeah, and he's making so much money off it, and it's, again, that's a very, very real life thing that
Mm,
I don't want to point to specific events. There's probably loads if I really wanted to, but people will monetize tragedies,
yeah.
whether they're involved with them, stories, whatnot. It does happen, and I just think it's a really interesting predicament for the director. And I just kind of have this fascinating with Jordan Peele. Like, how does like he come up with this? Like, I was genuinely thinking at the start, I know it wasn't real. I was like, I wonder, had there ever been a real life onset instant with, a monkey or an animal or
Mm.
something potentially killing a human? Not that I really am intrigued by stuff like that, but it
Well,
raised that inner thinking and question on me of, has something that happened today? And
I
the crazy
think,
thing is, like,
yeah,
how would people react to it? I think people would want to see more. And he said there's like a cult following, which is even weirder in its
yeah.
own right.
I think, yeah, it's that morbid curiosity. But I think there's been clips before. I remember one distinctly where it's a circus and there's a bear
Yes.
doing
It's
tricks
always better,
and
isn't?
there's one shot like the bear just basically flips and sort of kills one of the train like handlers. But I think they mentioned it in the film. I'm not sure what happened, but Siegfried and Roy, with the white tiger. I think they had a sort of a show in Las Vegas that was always going on, and I think one of them died because the lion just sort of, or lion or tiger, I'm not sure, but basically had enough and sort of like attacked them on stage. So I think that, I mean, they reference that in the film, and I think that is one of those ones where it does happen.
I'm glad you brought up the bears, because I don't want to get into it too much, but it's, when you see something go viral on like Insta or Twitter, and 90
Yeah.
of the time the comments are generally like, big up the bear, and it's like, it's, again, I'm not going to speak like animal cruelty too much, because I'm like, I like animals and stuff, and it's not really the place this video, but it's like bulls with oh god, what's it called, when they have the red things, they're trying to get the bulls mad, bullfights.
Yeah,
Just that, like,
yeah.
as a concept around Spain, like, we used to go to Spain, like, every year, and we never, ever, ever, ever went to one, and I couldn't imagine anything worse than going to a bullfight, and
Mm,
it's things like that that, you know, it's when you see. I think Ricky Gervais is an advocate. He always shares it if he sees them, because the bear going ransom at people. Because when the bears are dancing, it's always terrifying. And I know you're really into UFC. You're more like to
mm,
Khabib, like train fighting bears and stuff. And there's always, you know, like animals that some countries do like try and use to train others, and
mm,
it's really insane. Like thinking about it, but again, this is a reflection to a point of real life, and we're just sat here listing real life things where it's been similar. And what I kind of read of that is a satisfying moment for me is we spoke about the three kids terrorizing OJ. Um, how satisfying is it for you to know that eventually those got sucked up into the alien? Because I almost had a heart attack during that scene,
yeah.
and I was not ready to cope.
Yeah, it was terrifying. I mean, because at that point you didn't know the alien was the alien itself. You always thought it was a UFO, so you're like, oh, these aliens have come down. Like these are the aliens. But then you realize it was the kids. I think I don't. I feel a little bit bad for the kids because they were kids as well, and they were just retaliating to what Keke did. What
Stole the
Emerald
horse,
did.
wasn't it?
Yeah, stole the pop balls. So I think it was a sort of reaction to that. But I do feel bad for the kids because they were just kids. I mean, and they got eaten by an alien basically.
Yeah, and they were wearing those same costumes when they did it too. By the way,
Yeah, yeah,
did they
yeah.
not change? No, that is extreme, but it's really interesting. And again, it's knowing, like, again, that actress that was probably just there to see her old castmate growing up
Mm,
was part of all of that died, and all the other random ones, and also a weird one. So I was not late on Friday, but you know, getting to Resort Worlds after like rush hour at 4:30 for 5 o'clock showing is never normally easy.
mm.
Did you get a free icy for the
I
IMAX
didn't.
screening? You
It
didn't. You meant
was,
to.
yeah, you were allowed to. Yeah. I just didn't
It's
claim
not a
it.
great
So.
advert. It's not a great advert in the film. Like, do you want a free icy? By the way, here's the scene where like everyone that would have had one died. It's it's something about like there's product placement and there's that, and then saying like everyone have a free one after. But yeah, sorry, it's a really random side tangent. But if we
No,
want to like move,
yeah.
oh sorry,
Well, it was one of those. Like I saw the adverts, like, oh, you get free icy when you book the tickets. I was like, how does that relate? Like, why is it an icy? And then you saw the show, and it's like, oh, that's why. And then it's well, okay then.
it reminded me of I don't know. You know, you get like pancakes, but they're normally like Chinese. Like when you go to like restaurants and like Chinese restaurants, they're really thin, really thin. That reminded me
Mm.
of the alien. Like when it kept flying
Oh
and
yeah.
flying, I was like, I could really do the Chinese right now. Probably shouldn't have thought that while watching it, if I'm being honest. But if we want to move on away from talking about food, I really want to talk about the cinematographer. We'll get to Angel in a bit, but Michael Wincott played. His name's Antlers Holst, the cinematographer,
Mm.
and this is again one of those. I love this kind of character in films where they're like regarded as like a, you know, the greatest or something, and they're almost like observational, and you see them so many times. The really one I was thinking a lot of is Quint from Jaws, who's obviously the, you know,
Mm.
I'm terrified of sharks. And obviously he's got the fascination of sharks because he survived the boat going down. Obviously he's there to
Mm.
hunt sharks most of his life. I love this cinematographer's made it his life's goal
To get the
to
impossible shot.
find the to get the impossible shot. And there's something poetic that
He did get
he
in,
sort
yeah.
of, yeah, like he comes in as a sort of, he, I mean, forget the fact he's turned up with a non-electrical conductor. This geezer's got IMAX cameras in his house. I mean, how on earth you get one of them, I don't know. But I love this premise that the film isn't them trying to kill the alien. They just want to get
A
the
shot of it.
footage. Yeah, a
Yeah.
shot of it existing, you know, to change it. And it's, again, to me, that is more interesting than the usual, let's, you know, if it bleeds, we can kill it, love Predator. But
Yeah.
it's like their approach to it was different, which made the film feel different. And
Mm.
his role in it to get the shot and to then, you know, he's achieved his life's work. And I think that's what I love, that he just instantly knows what are his words? He says something like, no one
You don't
deserves
you don't
to
deserve the
see.
impossible shot. Yeah.
Yeah, and he kind of lets himself die and get conjured up with it.
Yeah,
And I thought there'd be something cheesy, like, oh, is he going to drop the IMAX reel? No, he didn't.
yeah,
But I just found that concept fascinating. And obviously, whenever we see him, we're getting shots of, like him doing documentaries where you've got like tigers attacking stuff. And
yeah,
how do you feel with this character? Because again, is he a reflection on that everybody wants to see? And maybe you shouldn't see, because that's how I also view it, that nobody deserves the imposter role. That's a very interesting phrase that I think I'd
yeah.
be curious if there's any cinematographers, if they like draw anything to that.
Yeah, I think it's one of those, like, he's not in the film for much. You see him at the film shoot, and then you see him later on when M is trying to recruit him for the
Yeah.
first time, and he's just not, he doesn't care. But then, like, I think hears about it on the news that everyone's been sucked up, and then he's like, oh, maybe there is something here. But yeah, the fact that he's so, like, sort of closed off from everything and doesn't care, and then at the end he sort of like doesn't he says to Angel, you don't deserve the impossible shot, and basically gets the impossible shot in the end. He achieves his life dream, but he dies for it, which I think he was, as a character, I think he was happy with, because he
Yeah.
achieved his life goal. Once you achieve your life goal, what is there to do after that? There's nothing else. So he
And I
was
think
happy
there's
to do that.
And I think as well, it's really what I said, even before then, when we first meet him and like he looks miserable on the film set,
Mm,
even when he's at his house, he's lying about, I've got people to feed, like, why do you want to feed me? He's
yeah.
clearly somebody that, not down on the low, but there's clearly a lot more to read into him. I just think he's one of them really fascinating individuals that, again, a character with maybe sort of 15 minutes of screen time tops. You've
Mm,
just got this, it just brings a bit of gravitas to the situation. I think the characters we've got Angel as well, who we'll speak about, they're all very young. So to bring
mm,
in like a sort of an elder statesman in a way, you
mm,
know, and I love this whole dynamic that not just the goals to get a film, but Angel's the young one with all the tech, but it's the old school way that is the way for them to get it,
yeah.
non-electronics in the camera. And um, Angel's character I really love. So I was having a
Mm,
Brandon Pereira plays him. And this is like almost his breakthrough film, if I'm being honest. He's been in a few
yeah.
short films and a few of his other. I think he's been in TV shows that OA I've heard of,
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
and he had a guest role on Doom Patrol, which I think has been cancelled now with the Warner Brothers situation. I've
Mm,
never seen it. I heard good stuff. Um, I really enjoyed his character, and I was reading because I thought he was going to die when he got sucked up with the cinematographer,
yeah.
and apparently he basically asked Jordan Peele to, like he argued for his character to stay alive, so they let him live.
Mm,
Um, and I'm really glad they did, because I think I don't like when the audience like, oh, I expect this to happen. I expect this person to die. I like this character. They shouldn't die. X, Y, Z. I hate all that sort of stuff. But I think sometimes it's a very brave move of a director to let a character live in a film like this, where you could expect them all to die except one.
yeah.
But I think his character had enough involvement in the story and sort of not character arc, because there's not really much to his character. He's just come out of a breakup. He's a tech guy there to help them.
Mm,
It's a really fascinating addition, I think, to a cast, and I just think he brings not just humor to it. There's clearly, like chemistry with him and the
yeah.
others, and I just think if anyone should have survived, he would have definitely been them. I
Mm,
think if he'd have died, it would have been them, like classic insert list of 10 people that died that didn't deserve it, and he'd be
yeah.
sat near the top.
Yeah. I think his character is really interesting. I mean, the fact that he's so like open when he initially meets them, like uh, telling OJ as soon as he meets him, like, "Oh yeah, I just got out of a breakup," and then shows pictures of like his ex, and like, "Oh yeah, she's gone to wherever to be a model or all this stuff." Like, keep an eye out for her and stuff like that. But then the fact that you see, I mean, even he has character development throughout the film. Like, he's always there in the background or helping them. Like, um, he's obsessed. Like, when that praying mantis is there on the camera, he's like, he phones up saying, "Get that praying mantis off the camera, please, please." And he's so like, and he's a conspiracy theorist as well. He is very deep in, like, he's like ancient
He already knew
aliens.
about it.
Like, yeah, look that up and sort of stuff like that. And he is intelligent as well. Like, when he's getting soaked up, before he gets soaked up, he wraps himself up in barbed wire because he knows that the alien is not going to like that, so he's just going to spit him out. So he is intelligent in that regard. Yeah, I really enjoyed his character. I think it was jokes.
No, same here. I think he brought, like I said, a lot of humour to it, and I don't think there'll be a sequel, but there's
No.
talk of a sequel, and it's because he said that if there
Mm,
was one, he'd be back in it.
okay.
I don't.
Mm,
Jordan Peele's not made a sequel yet, and you know what? I'll be blunt. I'd love him to continue making more original films because there's just not
yeah.
enough of them, or I say there's not enough of them that make it to big screens. I think Peele is a big enough name to do so, which is probably why this film got made. If I'm being honest.
Yeah.
But if we've spoken about characters, let's talk about it's basically a flying sarlacc pit, isn't it? Let's talk about the alien. That species remains nameless.
Yep.
However, they do give a name to it, which I'm trying to remember, which is really bad. Begins with
Leatherback.
B.
Was it?
Oh, bear with me. Let me have it.
Because they dub it to one of one of their horses' names.
Yes, I need to think. It is 2 words, isn't it? It's
Leatherback, I think, or leather jacket. Leather jacket, because it was
yes,
meant to be Emerald's horse, the first horse she trains. But obviously she doesn't get that. They bring in a Westerner, she calls him, to
jean jacket,
yeah, jean jacket.
as
That's the
well.
one. Yeah.
I mean, let's just talk about this. So, I said you know horror better than me. I'd normally say sci-fi is my realm. Where do we think about the concept that we've got this alien that's shaped like a UFO, but actually it's kind of shape shifting? Like there's no comparison to what I've seen before. Because if I'm going to be blunt, as I said, I'm not educated. I'm not seeing all of cinema, but I'm trying to think of the last time I saw a design of an alien or a beast. There isn't any way, shape, or form like this, and I think this is why it's hauntingly standing out to me. It feels so fresh as a concept that
Yeah.
they've gone in with this premise that okay, everyone's going to think it's a UFO, with aliens in it. How are we gonna work around it? Shape shifting, almost as I compared to like a pancake earlier. UFO. Someone in this when I came out the screening, a staff member was talking about it being like a mushroom. How do you feel about the design of it and its functioning as a villain? Is it something like you've seen before in other films, or does it feel new to you? Because to me, I'm still taking back thinking about its design structure and how it even works.
Yeah, I mean, I have a real interest in that sort of like sort of alien films, like Signs. I think Signs was the first ever like sci-fi sort of, I wouldn't say horror, but sort of sci-fi thriller film that I watched. I remember watching that when I was like whenever it came out, essentially. But ever since then, I've always been interested in like sort of sci-fi alien films, and this take of having, because in the trailers and throughout most of the film, you think there is a UFO with aliens inside, and then it turns out that the UFO is actually the alien. That's such a fresh take that I can't recall that ever being done before in a sort of sci-fi film. So it's really interesting the way they did that, and like, yeah, the shape shifting was something that I never really expected. So it came out of nowhere, like, but I didn't mind it because it was an interesting sort of shape shift. But yeah, it was interesting the shape shifting of it.
Yeah, because it would fly, but it didn't have wings. And one thing I
Mm,
noticed when we get its, when it's chasing them, it's almost like a jellyfish in ways. I don't know if they say that in the film or something I've read online, but obviously the core of the content is you can't. OJ works out it's a predator. You just can't look at it. If you
it's
look at it,
territorial.
that's how it's going to go. And it's a really interesting observation that when we get to the deaths of all the other Stephen Yeun before, they're all looking up, and it's again that reading in. I mean, 99.99% of people in real life would look up if that happened. That's
Mm,
just like
definitely.
that's just a common observation. And in this, it's that logic of if you look at we're going to die. It's almost like a reverse. Oh God, Quiet Place, where if you make a noise, they'll come and kill you.
Yeah,
Whereas in this, it just felt like something we're not seen before in ages. When they do the locking eyes at the end, that's a big moment, and it's almost this battle between them to draw enough space to get the alien as big as it can be, so one of them can get away. The
yeah,
ideal is an EMP as well. is a fantastic way to get tension.
Mm.
Even this, I mean, we haven't even spoke that scene with the rain. Like,
Oh yeah,
it's just stalking them for like an entire like night.
yeah, yeah.
And it's when Daniel Kaluuya's in the car, and it's not meant to be funny, but he just opens the door a tiny bit, looks up, and's like, nope, and shuts the
No,
door and
yeah.
goes to sleep. Um, it's a really interesting, I think, a mechanism for me as a viewer to see this new creature design, because again, at that point, you still do think it is an alien. Sorry, you think
Mm,
it's a UFO, but it's not. And when it was just dropping the blood over the house, like that imagery
mm,
was just, again, I don't do horror films often, but it's a typical sort of, oh, well, here's a haunted house, but let's have it covered in blood dripping down,
yeah.
combined with the rain. I just think visually this film stood, and we've not spoke about sort of cinematography yet. I was so surprised, and this is going to sound like a criticism of Jordan Peele. It's not. Hoyt van Hoytmer did the cinematography for this film.
Mm,
If anyone's unfamiliar with his work, he is one of the best working cinematographers today. I'm obviously going to be on the Nolan hype train, but obviously he's done everything from Nolan from Interstellar onwards. He did Spectre for Bond, which has a terrible filter, but the cinematography is wonderful. He did Al Astra, which is another space film,
mm,
and so many of the great films. And I was really surprised to see his name pop up for Nope. But just like the imagery of this film, I think cinematography is something a lot of people speak about too much these days. But we both saw it in IMAX, and I
mhm,
kind of thought, like, why is Nope going to be an IMAX film? Like, it doesn't
yeah.
have the, IMAX. And this is, I guess, also another praise of the film, that IMAX should be a format used for storytelling and for film. That it doesn't need to be a $200 million action blockbuster to use an IMAX camera, but
Mm,
shooting this in the valley it was on location. As I said, Hoyt van Hoytman was one of the best working cinematographers today, and just the shots in this film, the framing and jumping up to those IMAX cameras, it
mm,
didn't just feel like most Marvel ones where they press a button and just say they've like
yeah.
made it IMAX. They haven't. They've just like uncropped it sideways. This felt like this has been shot intentionally, and I said, if
Mm,
you're doing the IMAX films with Christopher Nolan, you're gonna have a bit of gravitas if you're gonna do an IMAX horror film. But
mm.
how do you feel the cinematography? Because again, it's just something not brought up, and I think it just brings so much more to the story, and how the film functions.
Yeah, I think it was really well done. I mean, I don't really look into the cinematography that much, um, but it's interesting they mentioned like the scene with the blood raining down on the house. Like
Yeah,
that's those sorts of shots. I imagine wouldn't have held as much sort of tension and sort of that sort of atmosphere if it was if it wasn't shot on IMAX cameras. Um, so I mean, I know this is a spoiler review, but if you're thinking about going to watch it, I would definitely recommend if you can get an IMAX viewing because it helps so much. Like especially with the
yeah.
sound quality as well. I mean, like all the visuals of of the alien like zipping around everywhere. You get so much out of that rather than like a normal cinema.
Yeah, and I think it's the first horror film to ever be shot on IMAX, which is really interesting, and
Mm,
it'll be and again, IMAX is, to me, is a wonderful format. I advocate it a lot, not just going to the cinema. I mean, we've known each other for 15 years.
mm,
How many times do we go? And it's normally on the premise we'll be going to the IMAX because, you know, it's the way the film should be. It's the best sound. It's the best visuals. I know that Dolby Atmos is meant to be really good, but
mm.
it's just that IMAX. It's what you want. It's how people
Different,
do it.
yeah.
Yeah, Carl's put made me laugh. The wind-up camera being the film with IMAX on the side. Yeah, and I think that's what I thought as well. That's what was
Mm,
alerting me to it. Um, it's that's almost like guerrilla filmmaking. Like they probably just had that reel on set for them to use, and like,
mm,
yeah, let's just put it in the film to make it work. And it's things like that do make it work. And again, Jordan Peele, now this is his third film, and he's bringing in these like bigger names to work with him. And I
mm.
think, when you're crafting something like this alien that's not been done, that can shapeshift, your format's important, your location's important, getting the valley, that image of it just being the cloud for 3 weeks, I absolutely
Yeah.
loved. I think had this have been set in a sort of like a city environment, I don't think the film would work. I
No.
think what makes it work is that it's almost, there's so infrequent amounts of characters that's why this sort of thing is doing what it can, because its territory is there's just this cloud happening over the hill. And one kind of thing I want to say about the creature is, if you notice, is when it dies, when the explosion happens, it sort of takes the shape of a lying down human. I don't know if you noticed anything about its
I
imagery
didn't notice
after.
that. No, I didn't notice that.
Obviously, it sort of scuffles and is a cloud and whatnot,
Yeah.
but that's one thing I noticed. And again, part of me thought, should I rewatch it again? I'd probably wait till it's out on Blu-ray or something now. But there's going to be a lot to read into. So we spoke about a lot of themes, spoke about characters. Is there anything you want to speak about that we've not spoken? Because I'm conscious we've been on almost an hour now as well.
I think the only thing that, I mean, you mentioned the blood in the house, like blood raining down from the house. I think that was with the alien being territorial. I think that was one of those like sort of threatening moves they had. It was sort of like trying to distress and Angel in the house, trying to like get them to leave, stuff like that, just sort of baiting them out. And I don't think I've seen that much blood in the film since maybe Carrie, the Stephen King book, the film based off the Stephen King book. I don't think there's been a like, not that I can remember off the top of my head anyway, that is used
That's
that
a
much
good
blood.
point.
But I think it was really well done.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on that. And as I said, been on this almost an hour. I feel like I don't have too much more to say. I've spoke a lot about the themes, how I've read into the film. I do we have favorite scenes? We spoke about the house. I'd love to pick. I'm sorry, I know it's putting you on the spot, and it might feel a bit infrequent, but I'm just slightly cautious. That's why. But oh god, if I'm going to go for a favorite scene, also I really love the Scorpion King hoodie. It's like I don't know. I love the concept that was his first ever film, was working the Scorpion King. He still got it all, but if I was going to pick a favorite scene from the film, I'm going to probably say, I mean, some of them are terrifying. I loved the first time they've got the camera set up when the insect's on the screen. There's tension there because we're figuring out what's going on with them in the house. We're finding out what's normal, what's not. And just the like through the gaps in the wood on the fence, we get to see like the horse being like sucked up. I loved that. Just that 5-minute sequence, and again, it's the IMAX cameras. They're utilizing a format to make this a visual entity for us as viewers. Aside from it being quality, the product, that's just something I want to pinpoint because it was at those moments where I felt more invested in the film than I had before.
I think it's hard to pin down a favorite one. I think I had a few. Every time Daniel Kaluuya said no, in the way that he did, the scene with the Jupiter's Claim kids just sort of dressed up in there, that was terrifying.
He punches one in the face, doesn't he? It's
he does. Yeah, and the scene where the Jupiter's Claim guests and sort of people are being digested, because it was so wild. It was like you were not expecting to see that sort of thing. So that was really interesting. And the final one is Gordy being like just about to fist bump the kid and him just being shot in the head. It was so surprising, and just out of the blue, like they were so close to that fist bump, and he just gets shot in the head, and he's covered in the blood, and yeah.
No, I'm with you. The Gordy stuff is a really interesting read. And what I'll actually kind of round out on as well, before I give sort of final verdict, I want to talk box office. As we said, this has been out, a few weeks now in the States. I just want to talk very quickly. This is quite interesting. This opening weekend had in America was $44.4 million. And if anyone's curious about the state of original films, that was the highest opening weekend in the States since Us in 2019 for an original film. That goes, and I know that Once Upon a Time in Hollywood was very, very similar, but did slightly under. But if you're going 3 years back for a film that opened with, I mean, it's not even 50 mil. 3 years ago, you're looking for original stuff like that. Obviously, there's been a pandemic between now and then, but it is really showing not how much the industry is changing, but I guess we could say the lack of not even products, just that we're not getting these releases for these original films. And as you kind of alluded to at the beginning, like Jordan Peele is a director that his background was comedy. So for him to come out and drop 3 horror films in a row, I'd imagine like everyone is like, oh, when are you going to do a comedy? Oh, when are you going to get? Is it?
Yeah.
I can never pronounce his name. Well, it's Key, isn't it, from
Key,
KPL?
key, yeah.
When you're going to get him in your films, and he hasn't delved into those two because it's going to be so obvious that if they did, everyone's just going to say, "Oh, look, it's an episode of your show," blah blah blah.
Well, they
So
did do that. Keanu, the one about the cat. I'm not sure when that came out. I think that came out after Get Out, but that was Key and Peele, I think.
yeah, that was when they did the Hot Ones together, wasn't it? That's when
Yes,
that was
yeah,
just after Get Out. But I
yeah.
don't think Get Out he directed that one. Sorry, I've got a great comment
Mm.
from Carl. Bear with me. Seen online, product true, no percent for not have. No, Carl, I'm with you on this. So again, I
Oh, that
mentioned I was
makes
chatting
sense.
to Charlie. So Charlie was at the press screening of Neil, who just on our channel before, and she texted me saying it was not of Planet Earth, and I was like, "What?" Like, I didn't know
Oh,
that, and I thought it was a spoiler, but I expected the film to end of not of Planet Earth. But apparently,
yeah.
that's been a really big reading of it.
Angel mentions
Which
that.
yeah,
Angel
so
mentions that. Yeah, it's like you can't use UFO anymore. It's something
yeah,
else.
I'm glad you said that, Carl. It probably is
Yeah.
true. Maybe it would have been two in our faces if they just ended it on,
No,
Nope
with the
vertically, not a
dots.
Planet
Yeah.
Earth.
Yeah.
Once Upon a Time in Hollywood literally ended like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood ... fancy music overplay. But yeah, let's go final thoughts. So, also sorry, one final station. We haven't spoke about the horse, the very first ever motion picture. Really quickly, I love that little thing. Not just because of the sort of the real life history of it. When I mentioned earlier, this theme is about the fascination of like visual events, history. They're trying to get the impossible shot.
Mm.
It's really interesting. This film has the significance of importance to the first ever moving image,
Yeah.
and you've got to think in context when that would have came out. I don't know. I can remember never. I think it was like the late 1800s. All that stuff.
Mm.
The fact that was the impossible shot, a moving image
Yeah.
back in the 1800s, and this is the evolution of that, getting into the impossible today is getting that foreign shot. I know
Mm.
that's a really random thing, but I wanted to bring that up because I'd forgotten to, and just because I realized I tweeted the gif of it earlier. If I'm giving my final thoughts on this film, I'm in a really interesting one. It's in my top 10 of the year
Mm.
so far. Now there's a lot of films I haven't seen, a lot more terrible films I've not seen than great ones. And I've been thinking about this film a lot. So I saw it on, as I said, Friday. It's Sunday now. I've watched a Bond film today, and obviously we're talking about Nope still. But I'm very curious about the long term effects of this. I'm gonna see it again in the future. I think if I have a lovely gap in between seeing it, as I said, I need to see Us as well. Maybe do a
Yeah.
little Jordan Peele trilogy at home or something. But I've really enjoyed this film. As I said, I didn't know what to expect heading into it, and I've come out, relatively pleased, unscathed, and it's left me thinking. And again, without sounding of myself or trying to sound like a snob. As much as I love an action film, which is mindless CGI, all that sort of stuff, I can watch a Bullet Train, brackets, not the awful West Ham stuff, close brackets, but it is nice to watch a film where I feel like I don't want to say I'm being challenged because it's definitely not
You have to think
in that
about it
sense.
though.
But yeah, I like a film where I'm thinking about it after I've seen it, not just the drive
Mm.
home. I'm really trying to read into the film. I'm curious to know what other people think, and kind of respect the Americans for not spoiling it on social media as well.
Mm.
But yeah, it's a very weird one. I don't know how it will stand in a few months. I said I'll watch it again, but I think this is going to be. I think this is, and I think I don't know if I tweeted this or something, but I think this is going to be a film, as I said earlier, not just use people see at school. I think this is a film a lot of people will speak about, will read into for many a year to come.
Yeah. Yeah. Same. I couldn't agree more. I think it is definitely top 10. I do. I think with me as well. Like I enjoy Jordan Peele as a filmmaker. So I'm really like. I hope he continues this trend of doing sort of films that aren't comedy because it seems like he's really found a niche of doing horror films that still have that sort of social thing that you have to think about. I mean, like with Get Out, you had the sort of the black people being sort of not superior, but that sort of thing. Then you had Us with like the planet being sort sort of joining hands and everything like that. And then you have this one with the social commentary of everything needs to be recorded or everything needs to be shot, everything needs to be proved, stuff like that. So I hope he continues doing these films like horror films and carries on having that social commentary in there in the background.
No, really well said. We've got a comment from Martin saying this must be good to make to our top 10s. Martin, I know you like to jump on our spoiler reviews, and I always thank you for them. I really hope this is one you got to see before you came on, though, just because I'm very intrigued. But no, I'm kind of with you with Jordan Peele. That I'm just trying to scan in my head some of the filmmakers, more modern ones than the old school ones that do these films. I think you could put on paper, a director's name that gets attached to a project, and you're in on the intrigue of what the project could be. What's the next insert name here film going to be? I'd say that Jordan Peele was at that stage, and
Yeah.
a very interesting comparison could be to M. Night Shyamalan. Shyamalan, sorry.
Yeah.
Purely, I know he has done, I guess a trilogy you could say with Unbreakable, Splitting Glass, but his films are original concepts in themselves, whether they work for all or some or not any at all. There is no denying that he does try and challenge the narrative and storytelling, and he hasn't just jumped up for franchises. And I would argue the same with Christopher Nolan. Yes, of course, he's done a trilogy of Batman films, but the big question is always, what's the next Nolan film going to be? Obviously, this time we're getting a biopic next year, and I think Jordan Peele's probably sat in that category for me. What's the next Jordan Peele film going to be? I don't care, because I'm probably going to go in and watch it, and I trust him enough to want to do something very different. And I think, as I said, the box office, I only said it's opening weekend, it's on about 115 million at the moment in the States, which I think is good numbers. Again, original concepts. We've got Top Gun crushing and dominating the box office still worldwide, which is amazing to see. But yeah, it's going to be interesting, this one. Will it get Oscars, all that sort of nomination stuff? I don't want to think about it at the moment. I know it's mid-August. I know there's not really many big films out till the end of September. But I can see this being campaigned for award season. Whether it gets any nominations is another question. I think if I was them, I'd be putting everything on cinematography, though. But yeah, that's going to round it out for our review for Nope. As I said, there's been people comment tonight, and as always, thank you for doing so. And if you're watching it later on, please do comment your thoughts. This has obviously been a spoiler discussion, so all thoughts are welcome. We'll reply to those, and we really want to hear your theories and what you think of this film. So please do get involved. And if you're a fan, if you've enjoyed this video, if you thought we weren't just waffling, we were actually talking good about the film, why not consider hitting the subscribe button? We can't say there's going to be challenging films every few days. But when there is, we're here to cover them, new releases, old releases, and everything in between. We are here for those. And if you want to get us on our social medias, you can find us on Twitter and Instagram at cinema_savvy, Facebook and letterboxd.com/cinema savvy. We've got a link in the description to our Redbubble store where you can pick up some of our merch. And the reason I keep looking down is because I'm just doing a lovely reminder. If you want to hear about a film that's got a bit of discussion, our review for Minority Report's going up on Tuesday, so that should say this Tuesday, not the Tuesday. That's just me typing on the spot. Of course, we're doing a Steven Spielberg retrospective. Myself, Tom, and Paul Klein are all on that one. It's 2 hours, 10 minutes. It's our longest one of the series, but there's a lot of deep reading into the text. Ayman, you were at my class at school. We studied ethics at GCSE, and we talk about that a lot in the video. So as I said, if you're a fan of science fiction, Tom Cruise, or Steven Spielberg, this Tuesday is a good place to come back to. So please do check that out if you do get the chance. And what else is coming up? Well, for anybody that's big on the football, Amazon may have just dropped a documentary on the team I support. All or Nothing, Arsenal. The final 2 episodes are going to be out this Thursday. And we're going to have a review this Friday, the 19th of August. Tate is back from America, so he should be on joining myself. And I don't want to tempt fate, we have a very, very, very good guest confirmed. I'm delighted at who we've been able to get, but obviously anything can happen between now and Friday. So I don't want to name drop who that guest is, but it's a renowned Arsenal YouTuber who has credibility and respect, unlike AFTV. So if you're a fan of football, do come back this Friday for what I'm really hoping to be one of the a really fun review and a deep dive into a new documentary released by Amazon. And yeah, Carl in the comments as well. Newcastle rumours are rife that Newcastle will be the next ones, but we'll get into that next Friday. So as I said, anybody big on the football, do join us next Friday. That'll be 10 p.m. If we do it well. Look at this. We've got Martin talking as well about the Arsenal in the comments. Arsenal bought well, and it's showing 100%. I won't divert into football too much. I've got it in outro, but join us this Friday, and we'll certainly bring up that Brentford and so many other amazing moments from this weekend. So I'm going to end up on that. Thank you all for watching, and be sure to join us then. Take care.